The Amazing Digital Circus is a show I can gush about for hours. However, with the recent release of episode 7, I mainly want to focus on one of my favorite cases of foreshadowing in the show. Its usage of red and blue. Obvious spoilers, go watch the show in its entirety if you haven't already. So, we good? Alright, we learn from the climax of episode 7 that the red button will keep the characters in the circus, and the blue button will allow the characters to leave the circus. However, I believe that this choice and the character's corresponding decision when presented with these options were foreshadowed prior to this episode. I also want to touch on the thematic meaning of the colors based on their usage. It's going to take a hot minute to cover all that, so I want to quickly recap how the characters handled the button dilemma. Initially, all the characters besides Jax are clearly in favor of pressing the blue button and leaving the circus before actually reaching the console room. However, when it comes time to actually press the button, Pomni hesitates. She wants Kinger's opinion, as it's clear from the adventure that Abel is hiding something about Kinger. Abel constantly wanted all the characters to avoid Kinger, so it makes sense why Pomni would want his opinion on what the right decision is. However, Zubul pressures Pomni, and they tell her that everyone wants to leave the circus. Ragatha also wants to leave, and Kinger is clearly not all there in his mind, so it's a little unclear what button he would have pressed. Pomni suggests having a vote, but that's quickly interrupted by Jax making the decision for everyone else. He slams the red button, illuminating the room in red. Now with all that in mind, I want to go over all the instances of red and blue I thought were notable enough to mention. To quickly recap, pretty much everyone, i.e. Ragatha, Zubul, Gangle, want to leave, so you'll see them associated with blue. I'm choosing to include Gangle because I think her conversation she has with Zubul before they go to the console room indicates that she was ready to leave and press the blue button and supported the decision. She's obviously not as outspoken as Ragatha and Zubul when it comes to wanting to press the blue button, but I still believe that she wanted to press the blue button. Kinger wasn't all there when he was presented with the buttons, but he's commonly associated with blue, which makes me think that he would probably select the blue button if he was all there in his mind. Moving on, Pomni is unsure if leaving is the right decision, so you'll see her commonly associated with a mix of red and blue. And lastly, Jax, who wants to stay in the circus, is commonly associated with red. So with all that out of the way, let's get to the fun part and start looking at some of the examples. So to start off, we see Zubul sitting alone on a blue couch at the start of episode 3. As we talked about in episode 7, they're the most outspoken supporter of pressing the blue button. Near the end of episode 3, Jax is tied up in a red wagon. Jax, of course, is the character who decides to press the red button, and we can see this red color association come up many more times. At the end of episode 4, we see some characters sitting on couches. Jax sits on the red couch, Pomni sits on a purple couch, which, red and blue make purple, so that makes sense. And Kinger and Ragatha sit on a blue couch. At the start of episode 5, Zubul is again seen sitting on a blue couch. In the present Pomni segment, Pomni must select a wire to cut in order to defuse the bomb. Kinger says to choose her favorite color, which is red. Kinger, however, states that he'd personally go with blue instead, saying it's closer to his favorite color, which is black. Pomni seems to flip-flop between these colors in these examples, and that's reflective of her reluctance to select the blue button immediately. During the anime segment in the same episode, both a red pencil pouch and a blue notebook sit in front of Pomni. At the end of episode 5, Jax leads Pomni to this primarily red area, and everyone else goes to this mainly blue area. At the start of episode 6, Zubul is hiding in a pot in front of a blue-covered wall. The wooden mannequins in the example of how the trust exercise will work are labeled with A and B, which are both red and blue. After shooting and eliminating Ragatha, Jax is illuminated by a red wall, while Pomni stands in front of a blue wall. While Zubul and Gangle discuss how important it is to accept yourself, the room is heavily covered in shades of blue. When we return to Pomni and Jax, they're walking parallel to a red wall. After both getting eliminated, Kinger and Ragatha sit in the loser's corner, an aquarium doused in blue. While Jax and Pomni sing outside of Zubul's room, they spin with each other. We know that Pomni has both a red hand and a blue hand. However, when she holds Jax's hand, she does so with her red hand. In most instances, when Pomni is associated with red, she's typically with Jax, which makes me think that this is sort of representative of how her close friendship that she was starting to build with Jax would have made her more inclined to stay. At the end of the episode, when Jax hyperventilates and looks himself in a mirror, the room is primarily red, including the mirror. I believe that the red in this room sort of represents Jax's desire to fully disassociate with the circus, and keep pretending that none of this is real or affecting him. At the end of episode 6, Caine decides to read the results of the favorite character awards, and when he realizes he received no votes, his eyes glitch both red and blue. Moving on to episode 7, every character that goes to the beach has a blue bathing suit, except Jax and Zooble. Zooble doesn't wear a bathing suit to begin with, but neither does Jax, to be fair. When the gang reaches Caine's office doors, they are met with red and blue double doors. When Pomni grabs the rest of the cast when they think they're about to leave the circus, she does so with her blue hand. She then offers to grab Jax's hand with her red hand, but he refuses. Lastly, of course, the 2 buttons, both red and blue. The entire room is doused in blue, the obvious choice. And as we know, Jax selects the red button, making Caine pop out, revealing he in all his red glory was behind this adventure. Now, a lot of these, if not all, could just be coincidences, I won't lie. I could just be making mountains out of molehills. However, with the amount of times this happened, I like to think to an extent it's intentional. Also, like I said, I'd like to take into consideration the thematic meaning of these colors. I believe that the meaning behind these colors is important to understanding the importance of their usage throughout the show. To begin with, blue in the buttons, of course, represents escaping the circus and leaving the digital circus behind. However, I believe that the usage of the color blue is important. You see this color frequently shine in a room when characters are discussing meaning and humanizing the emotions they're feeling. I believe this happens on 4 separate occasions. The first scene we see this happen is in episode 2. In episode 2, Gummy Goo's reality is shattered as he realizes that he's an NPC and all his goals and ambitions have been for nothing, and that he's nothing more than just an obstacle for the main cast. However, Pomni tries to comfort him, validating his emotions and reassuring his importance in this world. She tells him that there's people that still care about him and invites him to join the circus and be her friend. He accepts, and the 2 escape the test map before Gummy Goo is unfortunately brutally murdered by Caine. In episode 5, the stargazing segment takes place outside in the circus grounds at night, and the area is covered with this comforting shade of blue. This segment is also notably one of the first times we hear Jax open up about how he feels about other characters in the circus. Jax thinks that Gangle won't be happy by befriending Zooble. Pomni is surprised by this, stating that she didn't think he cared what other people thought. When Ragatha brings up Jax no longer having any friends, we see Jax get visibly pissed. He then starts to talk about how he feels about Ragatha, not in a particularly hostile way, but in a more genuine way. Don't get me wrong, he's still being mean about her, but the way he does it sounds far more human than we've heard previously. But then he puts on his facade again where he pretends to be the funny one and not care about anything or anyone in the circus. The interactions Pomni has with Jax in the scene really humanizes Jax. It shows that he actually does think about the other people in the circus and how they interact with each other. It's one of the few moments where we get to see what Jax is actually like whenever he's not putting on his asshole persona. Moving on, in episode 6 we have 2 instances of a primarily blue room. The first is when Zooble and Gangle have a talk with each other. Gangle is afraid that Jax is going to want revenge on her because she didn't want to team up with him. Zooble reassures Gangle, telling her that she's more than just his toy, she's a human. Gangle opens up more, asking how she's supposed to like the part of herself that only makes her worse. Zooble tells her that flaws make you, you, and you should only care about the real you. You have to choose to love yourself, the good and the bad. In the same episode, Ragatha opens up to Kinger in the loser's corner. Ragatha feels like she's failed both Jax and Pomni by trying too hard to get on her good side. Kinger tells her that it seems to him like she's putting too much pressure on herself to always be there for other people. Ragatha says she's worried Pomni is going to turn into a different person that doesn't want her around. Kinger then tells her that sometimes you just have to give people space and let them do their own thing, just as long as you have each other's back when they need you. Giving them space isn't the same as giving up on them. Ragatha says that she just wants everybody to be happy, and also doesn't respond when Kinger asks if she hates herself. Kinger tells her that he used to hate himself. That was until Ragatha showed up, and made his life much more positive. He tells Ragatha that she also needs to look out for herself, instead of just worrying about other people. These are 4 of the most emotional scenes in the entire show, and all of them take place in these rooms that are primarily blue. This leads me to think that this is intentional. Blue is strongly associated with these positive emotions, when the characters are able to actually open up and act human. Unlike Jax's interpretation where he says that everyone is just archetypes and nothing more, these blue scenes directly contradict this ideology. We see these characters being what they are, human.
Yeah, Ragatha's the cheerful one.
She came to me wanting to be on my team. I said no. Why did I do that?
Gangle's the sad one.
Whatever happens, I've got your back if you've got mine.
Yeah. Now let's go kill Pomni and Jax.
Kinger's the crazy one.
We all go through and deal with things differently, and sometimes you just need to let people do things their own way. As long as you're still there when they need you. Giving someone space should never be the same as giving up on them.
Zubal's the grumpy one.
You have to choose to love yourself. Even if it doesn't make sense. It's not natural, it's intentional.
'Cause I'm the funny one. I don't know. I think she tries way too hard. Like, we're stuck in... Why are you always pretending everything's always fine? Like, if you tell someone they're loved and appreciated every day, it just kind of loses all meaning. It just feels like she's trying to take advantage of you, you know? I don't know.
I feel like the color blue in this show represents a longing to be human, and yearning for these normal human interactions. In episode 7, the blue button will allow everyone within the circus to return to normal, which is what you think everyone wants. However, as we said, this is not what happens. As I previously mentioned, Pomni clearly knows something is up with the way Abel is acting about Kinger, with Kinger having more knowledge about the circus and this Abel character than he's able to let on. As Pomni tries to calm the situation and ensure they're making the right choice, Jax panics and slams the red button. It's clear from what we've seen that Jax has issues, both inside the circus and outside. However, what is waiting for him outside must be horrible if he'd rather stay in the circus for eternity. We've seen time and time again that Jax is associated with this red color, his desire to stay, to believe that this is all just a silly cartoon full of silly archetypes. He tries to disassociate and pretend none of what's happening to him is real, that he can just live in here and not worry about the real world or whatever's waiting for him on the other side. I believe that the color red represents the desire to stay, to pretend that everything is okay, to pretend none of these people are real, and just disassociate from the real world. To dumb down these colors, thematic meaning, blue means you want to leave, and red means you want to stay, just like the buttons. The characters and their corresponding choice when presented with this option has been foreshadowed heavily throughout the show, primarily in episode 6. This is far from the first time something like this has been foreshadowed in the show, which is personally what I love about this show. Anytime you rewatch a series, you notice something that points to future events that you didn't notice the first time. The red and blue foreshadowing and its symbolism is mainly what I want to focus on in this video. But there's some other cases of foreshadowing. It's my video, so I want to mention them because I think they're cool and neat. At the start of the series, Kinger mentions an insect collection. We learn why he likes insects in episode 3, as his wife got him to like bugs. In episode 2, Kinger speaks clearly to Ragappa when he has a bucket on his head, foreshadowing how darkness clears his mind. Those are just a few things with Kinger, but we'll get back to this little foreshadowing rascal in a second. In episode 7, we get some of the most obvious foreshadowing on a rewatch in the show, and we get it from these two wonderful fish. The yellowfish tells Pomni to try harder if she wants to find his sunken treasure. The fish says that he and his brother are sure she won't get the treasure. The redfish then states that he tells lies. Pomni finds the treasure and the yellowfish is absolutely distraught after finding out it's actually empty. This is a pretty clear parallel between Caine and Abel in this episode. Caine is the yellowfish, creating an adventure that has a great treasure that Pomni desires. The redfish, which parallels Abel, tells lies. We learn at the end of the episode Caine created this meaningless adventure with no reward, or no treasure, by misleading them with Abel, the one who tells lies. Another case of foreshadowing that's kind of more of a motif when you think about it is the bee that we see on Abel's plan. Something that has frequently been seen in stuff that Caine draws or makes is bees. If you have a sharp eye, this can foreshadow that Abel is actually in cahoots with Caine. What the bee drawings actually mean can be anyone's guess. But I guess it's none of my beeswax. Anyway, another instance of foreshadowing occurs with Ribbit, Jax's friend that abstracted before Kaufmo. In both episode 5 and 6, we see Jax look at her door, indicating that they had some sort of connection with each other. This is later confirmed in episode 7, where we see that Jax, Ribbit, and Kaufmo all used to be friends with each other prior to their abstraction. What actually happened to cause Ribbit to abstract is anyone's guess, but it's likely that she and Jax had some sort of fight, as indicated by the snow globe in Caine's office. And lastly, something that's been foreshadowed so much it might as well be canon. Kinger helped create the Circus. We know that he's been in the Circus longer than any other character, and we also know that he studied computer science for 7 years. In episode 6, he's able to create a butterfly out of thin air. Kinger is also the only one to laugh at Caine's reference to the Chinese room thought experiment, which essentially is this idea that AI can fake genuine comprehension when in reality it's not actually thinking for itself, and instead it doesn't actually understand the data it's processing, it's just manipulating what it knows without actually thinking about the meaning, which essentially just means that the AI is not conscious, it cannot think for itself. Kinger understanding this reference shows that he has some knowledge on the capabilities of AI and how they function. And as we know, Caine is an AI. In episode 7, we see that he's fairly knowledgeable about the Circus, and seems confused when Zubul says that Abel was one of the original programmers. He also seems confused by the administrator pass that Pomni gives him. Might be looking too much into it, but we see this weird, unidentified object in Kinger's pillow fort that looks like it could be a real administrator pass. But we'll never know because he walks into the light and forgets what he's doing. Without knowledge of the Circus's inner workings, it would be extremely difficult for Kinger to know that either Abel or the administrator passes were phonies. Even though Jax thinks Abel is a liar, he still goes along with the plan. I believe that if Kinger was in the right state of mind, he would have not gone along with Abel's plan. Abel also claims that Kinger was one of the employees at CNA that helped create the digital circus. Now, if we can trust anything that comes out of Abel's mouth is kinda up in the air, so take Abel's testimony with a grain of salt. I think it's pretty obvious why Abel didn't want Kinger involved in the adventure, because he probably called bullshit on everything Abel was saying about the circus and its creation and everything else. With all that said, I think it's a safe assumption with all the evidence and foreshadowing in the show that Kinger is in some way related to the creation of the digital circus. For any future foreshadowing, that's where you guys come in. I want to hear what you guys have noticed that could potentially hint at a future event in the show. There's definitely a lot that you can derive from the show, and I hope to hear what you guys all think. Also, really quickly, I want to touch on this. The 57 thing is one of Gooseworks' Easter eggs that she puts in her shows. I don't think this is actually going to point to anything happening in the future, but I have also noticed this. I don't want you guys to think I just overlooked that. Anyway, overall though, I'm really glad I finally got to talk about the show. I love this show more than words can describe. All its complex characters, beautiful animation, it's just wonderful storytelling. I cannot wait to watch more of this show in the future. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope I was able to get my thoughts across clearly. Even if I'm looking too far into it, I feel like through watching this show, I've learned something. The more you notice coincidences happening over and over, the less they start to be coincidences, and the more they start to become patterns. Thank you very much for watching.